Hello and welcome to this afternoon's live recruitment event for Mitie Care and Custody. My name's Michelle Kelly. I'm one of the contract managers for the company, and the agenda we're going to go through today is as follows. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'll introduce you to the panel. Unfortunately, there's only two of us today due to unforeseen circumstances. Then we'll go over an overview of us as Care and Custody. And then we'll do an introduction into police services and our footprint, followed by looking at what HCB does, what we require from a HCB, and then you'll get a bit of a video clip of a couple of our guys telling you what they do in their role. And then we'll talk you through the application process and give you then the opportunity to ask any questions that you've got or you want to know. And then once we've gone through all the questions, we'll say what happens next and talk you through that. Next slide, please, Stephen. So a bit of an introduction to the panel. Obviously, my name is Michelle Kelly. I've been a paramedic for 20 plus years. Prior to working for Mitie, I worked for the NHS ambulance services for all of my career. I've managed clinicians for about 18 years, and I transferred to the private health system of Mitie in 2017. And this has been a great opportunity as far as I'm concerned. I started initially as a HCP, the role that we're looking for people today, in custody before becoming the contract manager for Staffordshire. And then from there, I became the manager at Nottinghamshire as well. I have a bit of a strategic overview of the contract delivery, our performance, and making sure we meet all our targets within budgetary requirements. So we haven't got Charlie today, but she's my lead senior HCP in Staffordshire. But I'll introduce you to Rosie. Okay, Rosie.
Hi, my name's Rosie. I'm a senior healthcare professional in Nottingham. Prior to this role, I worked in the NHS for 4 years, and I've been with Mitie for 2 years.
Thanks, Rosie. Okay, next slide, please, Stephen. Okay, who are we? Probably a lot of people have never heard of us before. So we're a company that was established in 2009. And we won our first contract in 2010, which was a Cantfield House Immigration Removal Centre. From there, we've moved into various fields, into immigration removal centres and prison services. And the main sort of area that we're looking at today that is one of our big clients is police custody forensic healthcare. So that's one of the big areas that we hold contracts within now. So there are 3 areas that we cover within all of these contracts. So we've got police custody forensic healthcare, which is basically a medical only contract where we just deal with all the medical needs within custody. We have integrated contracts which deal with the medical needs plus any of the liaison and diversion delivery. And then we also have detention officer contracts which are there for the police support and welfare. So them as a whole are what the contracts we deal with in police services. So we have 12 forces that we deal with at the moment, which includes 4 SARCs. That means we employ 397 HCP across our contracts. We are looking at, well, we do deliver now HCP model. So initially all these roles were very doctor led and it was delivered by doctors, but now we've sort of evolving all our healthcare professionals through development and training so that we have what we call a HCP model, so that our leaders and our people within the contract are people that we've built and grown. They're all become the experts within this field. Okay, next slide then, please, Stephen. So what are we? We work in partnership with our police services. So we're obviously employed by them and they become our customer, but actually working in partnership and working as a relationship is key to making everything work and everybody being safe. So we deal with all the custodial welfare and activities with detained persons, making sure that they have whatever they need while they're in custody, be that medical treatment, be that their own medication, be that whether we have to do any forensic procedures to gain any evidence, whether that be for a sexual offence, for any serious offences. But we just make sure they're basically safe all the time that they're in custody. And that means that then obviously from a police point of view, everything's clear and very concise. We're basically responsible to make sure patients don't deteriorate and are looked after well while they're there. Next slide, please, Stephen. So what's our footprint? If you looked at this map, you can see that all the big grey lobby areas are where we have forensic medical services. So they're all sort of areas where we have contracts and where there are custody suites. So these are all the main areas that we're looking at, where we've got contracts at the moment. Doesn't mean to say that we don't grow and we don't get other contracts anywhere else, but this is our current footprint now. And we currently have vacancies in Greater Manchester Police, Merseyside, Cheshire, which are all integrated contracts, so do both the L&D delivery, liaison diversion delivery, and the medical delivery. But then we also have just the medical services, where we've got vacancies currently in Leicestershire, Sussex, British Transport Police, South Wales, Warwickshire, West Mercia, Nottinghamshire and Staffordshire. So they're where we've got all the vacancies currently. So obviously from that point there are lots of opportunity there, wherever you live in the country realistically. Okay, next slide please. So what do we look for in a HCP? So obviously it's quite a challenging role, if I'm honest. So you are on your own a lot of the time. So we need people to be that are quite autonomous, because a lot of the time it is solo working. So we require you to have a minimum of 2 years post-qualification experience, and that is both the same for paramedics or nurses. This is make sure that you have been out there and got a bit of exposure to doing those quick assessments, quick triage, and making sure that you can filter out what you need to as a priority. Then the other key skill that we look for is vena puncture, because obviously there are the times where you do need to take bloods for forensic sampling. So they are the sort of key skills that we look for. And that's why when we say this sort of line, we look for people that have come from an A&E background, primary care, substance misuse or urgent care, because these are all the areas that people tend to have to do that quick assessment, make a decision of what to do for the patient's care moving forward. So that is the sort of area that we look for people. So if you're quite newly qualified, or if it's not something that you've currently got experience in, then obviously we do consider people that haven't got that experience with the post 2 year qualification. So I wouldn't say don't apply, but if you're quite new and you're looking at areas to develop, and this is something you fancy later on, then actually look at those areas to go and do some time in. So look at A&E as probably the big place for me that I would say was a good place to go to get that exposure of doing that quick assessment and making decisions. Next slide, please, Stephen. Okay, then we're going to watch a couple of videos now, and that's going to be of Rosie and Charlie to give you a bit of an insight into the HCP role. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rosie. I'm one of the senior.
Bit technical.
Currently, in this contract, we cover 2 custody suites. One's based in Mansfield and one that's based in Nottingham. Prior to this role, I was working as a senior staff nurse in a major trauma centre for 4 years. I joined Mitie in 2018 as a HCP, and I can honestly say I instantly fell in love with this role. It's incredibly varied from day to day. You get to work autonomously, although the support of the clinical team is there when you require it. I love the unpredictable nature and not knowing what's going to go through the door. It goes from 0 to 100 very quickly here. We support all the investigations of major crimes, and that can be anything from blood samples for the Road Traffic Act right up to intimate samples for alleged sexual assault and alleged murder cases. After a year of hard work, determination and support from the senior management team, this year I became a senior healthcare professional. You get plenty of opportunities for training, development and progression in this company, and Mitie supports everything. Next year, my plan will be to take on an acting lead HCP role, and that has been fully supported by all the senior members of the team.
Hi, I'm Charlie. I'm the lead senior healthcare practitioner for Mitie, and I work in the Staffordshire Police contract. My background is A&E nursing and cruise ship nursing, and I've been in forensic practice now for about 4 years, with 3.5 years of those within Mitie. The job itself is to provide for the healthcare needs of detainees in police custody. In Staffordshire, we operate out of 2 custody sites, so there are always 2 clinicians on duty and usually 1 senior healthcare practitioner going between the 2 sites. You can be issuing normal medications for chronic health conditions. You can be delivering health promotion opportunities and signposting onto services such as mental health teams, safeguarding teams, drugs teams, homeless shelters. You can advise them to go to GPs, walk-in centres, A&Es, or at the next minute you can be dealing with an emergency, life-threatening situation as a first responder whilst waiting for the paramedics. Everyone in the contract has a lot of opportunity to develop. There's lots of training available. Everybody will be ILS trained because that's the minimum level required to deliver the life-saving treatments. There's lots of supports from line managers. You'll get regular one-to-ones, regular appraisals, and there's also a development pathway. You start as a healthcare practitioner, and from that you can develop into a senior healthcare practitioner, and then onto a lead senior healthcare practitioner, which is my current role, and then finally into a clinical lead HCP role. The clinical lead primarily was a doctor position, and now they've found a way to develop and train the paramedics and nurses within the company so that they could perhaps take on that role as well. There's lots of courses available through universities as well. One of them being the forensic training course, which is a week away. It's university accredited, and it's a really, really valuable course. It gives you an introduction into forensic practice and actually gives you a live court experience as well. We train you in how to write professional witness statements, and sometimes alongside that you do need to attend court as a professional witness. We provide all the training in that. There are perks to working within Mitie itself. Mitie is a big corporation, so there's lots of access to things like discount vouchers. There's share schemes, there's savings schemes, cycle to work schemes, private healthcare, critical illness insurance, corporate gym memberships. And if you can't find what you're looking for there, we carry an NHS smart card so that we can access our computer systems, and through that you can often get NHS discounts. On top of that, you also have a police ID card, so you can get into blue light discount memberships, police discounts as well. As a company itself, it's a very exciting time to join forensic practice. There's lots of projects you can get involved in, such as recruitment drives like this. You can join a research and development team. You can get involved with writing journal articles. You can do audits in the clinical governance team, and also you can become an ILS trainer and train our teams in-house as well.
Okay, thanks both to Charlie and Rosie there. I think that sort of give you a bit of an insight into what the role is. So how do we go through the application process? So there are different ways of getting through to the jobs depending on which area you're applying for. Obviously we use the NHS jobs and we use the Smart Recruiter through Mitie site. If unsure or not which way to go, you can email our PoliceServices and that we will point you in the right direction as the first point. Once we've got you through that recruitment and you've put your application in through our system, we'll ring you and do you a phone pre-screening call. And just decide which contract you're looking at, what the role is, so you understand a little bit more about the role, and then we'll move on to invite you to a Microsoft Teams interview, which is a competency-based interview that takes about an hour, and we'll ask quite often very standard questions about how you deal with situations and work through that interview process and see whether you're a suitable candidate for us. And obviously, if you are, we'll move on then to get you through our what we call vetting process. So there are two parts to our vetting. The first part is our DBS, which is done by a company called Catifract. Well, they'll get information from yourself and make sure all your references, etc., are done and you have the right to work in the country. So they'll do that part. But alongside that, which is probably the most important part for us, because if you can't get through police vetting, then you can't work in our custody sites. The police vetting is very, very stringent and can take a little bit longer than other parts of the vetting. But even though that's the case, I have turned them around sometimes in a week or two, which has happened over the last couple of weeks. So all we say to people on that is make sure you're very open and honest, as the main important part of that is integrity. So even if there are any small issues, even down to the point of going on a driving awareness course because you've been caught speeding, then just declare it. The more you the better it is that it's declared, because otherwise they will find it out anyway. So it's always good to just at least be upfront and open and honest, because if you have got that, doesn't necessarily mean that you won't get through the vetting process. So we always tell people to work through that part. Once we've had that completion of vetting and we've been told by the police that you passed their vetting, we'll ring you up and get an agreed start date. So we'll have a discussion with you with how long ever your notice period is, and then decide and agree with you a start date. What will happen then is you'll come in and do a couple of days induction with the contract manager and the clinical lead and go through our induction process, which then will follow on with doing shadow shifts. So you'll work alongside with another senior HCP so that they can make sure that you become competent. And while you're doing that, you'll be going through what we call our competency document, and you'll be getting signed off to say you're competent. And you won't work alone until that document is completed and you're deemed as okay to work autonomously and on your own. We say 6 shifts. If it means that you need to do longer, then that's fine. We work with individuals and obviously everybody's very different. But we do a minimum of 6 shifts shadowing. So there is plenty of time for you to understand the role before you get what I call let loose and you're live then on a line, and then the whole custody block is yours. That doesn't mean to say there's not always support there, because there is. It just means that you're classed as deemed competent to work across that process. Okay, that's fine. Thanks, Stephen. Okay, then now where to go next then? So basically it's your opportunity to ask us any questions that you want to ask. Obviously you can write them down at the side. We have had some previously, so I will go through some of the questions that we have had from some of you guys that are on the call today. So one of the questions that we did have is, are we going to be police nurses? No, you're not police nurses. You work for us as a private independent company, and the police are our customers. So you work for the police, but you actually work for Mitie as a company. So that's where the line sits, that you're not police nurses, even though you work in police custody. So for our contracts, that's the case. One of the question was, would you consider RGNs rather than RMNs? Well, RGNs are the ones that we do consider. RMNs, which is mental health nurses, are ones that have to have a specific reason or have to be dual trained to get through. So RGNs are what we do look for. Like I said previously, mainly if they've got that A&E background or that primary care background, then that's what we are looking for in the people that come forward. So we do look for that background. And RMN, we do consider RMN nurses, but it is a special consideration to whether we decide that's the case when we move them forward. One of the other questions that we've had previously is, do you recruit newly qualified? Due to obviously the role and how autonomous you have to be and the experience you require to be in that sort of role, we don't take on newly qualified, and I feel that is the right decision, because I think you need to be experienced in your patient assessment before you come into here. So I do think it's key that you've done previous work elsewhere to understand patient presentation and things like that. I suppose, Rosie, would you want to put a bit more detail of why we don't want newly qualified people in there?
Yeah, so a lot of the time you will be working on your own in the custody suite, and when you come across emergency situations, they could be anything from seizures, cardiac arrests, and if you don't have that experience, everybody looks to you to know the answer and to know what to do. So it's really important that you do have a bit of experience, and that, like we said, A&E is desirable because you kind of have a mixed bag then. But yeah, I mean, newly qualified, you're just not going to have the experience.
Thanks, Rosie. I suppose other questions we've had is, so what sort of salary? Yeah, we do offer a 34k salary, and there isn't any enhancements with that. I suppose there are lots of other benefits which Charlie's mentioned. So that's why we say we don't offer any enhancements for shifts or etc. But then I think the other big things, is a big selling point for us, is we have lots of promotional opportunities to become more qualified. The training options are there as well. So they are sort of key parts for So there's a question that's just come through. So somebody's asked, is it full-time? No. So depending on which contract you're in will depend on whether they do part-time vacancies or whether they're only full-time. It is specific to contract to what the vacancies are at the time, but it's definitely a consideration. And you've said you live sort of the Blackburn way, which my head says that's northwest somewhere. So I would say that I know one thing that is going on in the northwest at the moment. They are recruiting to a bank HCP for those 3 big contracts, which are liaison and diversion contracts as well. So they are recruiting for those people to work across those 3 parts up there. So that is definitely an opportunity if you weren't looking for full time. And I do know contracts do take part time. It just depends on what the operational delivery is locally. Okay, hopefully that answered what you were after. If not, please ask further. Not a problem, or drop us an email and we'll answer a little bit more to you. Obviously, a lot of people work previously in the NHS, which is probably the same for myself. And I know one of the big draws to NHS is pensions. Mitie do offer Scottish Widow Pension, which is also a very good pension scheme, which is a 5%, which in my opinion is probably as good as NHS. So it is also sort of on a par for me from a pension point of view. Yeah, okay, it's not the same as an NHS pension, but you never lose your NHS pension. That still sits there in the background and you still get that at retirement age. I find this is just there as an additional top up. So I think that's another great point to work in for Mitie. Another shift, the question has just come through. What are the shifts? Rosie, do you want to answer the shifts? Because they are the same wherever you work.
Yeah, sure. So the shift pattern is a rolling pattern. It's 4 on, 4 off. So we do 2 days and 2 nights. They start at 6:45 and finish at 7, which is fantastic because you know exactly where you're working for the whole time that you're working for Mitie. So you can plan all your holidays in advance.
So it's always useful. Yeah, so the shifts never change. Obviously you book your leave when you want it, and obviously there are some stringent rules around booking leave, the same as you would work for anybody, but like you say, people can swap shifts as well. We do allow shift swaps and things like that as well, whatever you deem you need to do. But I think the one good thing, which I know a lot of companies do, off duty as they call it, but actually I think we just plan our rota so people can look what they're on next Christmas, matter about the Christmas after. So I think it's just very clear what shifts you're working, and so people can know what they're doing. Yeah, 12 hours do seem like quite a long time, but you only do 4 and then you get 4 days off. So I think that's the bonus from that point of view. Okay, I think we'll round the questions up there unless there's any urgent ones that anybody wants to ask. Okay, no, that's fine then. Just close that bit down. So what will happen next from your perspective? You'll get an email from ourselves, so you'll get an email from our police services email asking you for some feedback about what you thought about today's event, whether it was useful or not. That'll also include a list of all the vacancies that we've got. And then we'll add you to our communications bulletin, which you'll receive regular vacancy updates of what we've got available. Then finally, we'll say to you, if you want to contact with regards to anything, give us a call, an email through our Police Services Mitie email, and we'll get back to you. Whether you want to speak to somebody local, one of the contract max locally, whether you would like to have a conversation with one of the senior managers within the contracts and understand the job a little bit more, then more than happy to discuss with you. Thank you, Stephen. Then one final bit I've got to say is thank you for joining us. Hopefully it was useful. Obviously, any further questions, just drop us a line, and obviously we'll be holding more of these sort of events to get that sort of information out there. Thank you very much.